The information provided by Taming Lightning is designed to provide helpful information and to educate on the subject discussed. The information provided is true and complete to the best of our knowledge and is not intended to be used without professional guidance or supervision. All recommendations are made without guarantee on part of Taming Lightning and affiliates. Taming Lightning and affiliates disclaim any liability in connection with the use of this information. Welcome back, or welcome to the Taming Lightning podcast. I'm Percy Eccles II. I'm the creator and host of Taming Lightning, as well as the emerging plasma tech at Pittsburgh Glass Center. Taming Lightning podcast features a series of conversations to help expand our understanding of plasma and neon light, looking beyond its associations with novelty and sign making, and to explore the potential for noble gases as an artistic medium. Hello, Lightning Tamers, and welcome to Chapter Notes. These are bonus episodes to supplement the Taming Lightning Geeks collaborative series, Intro to Plasma, where I was inspired to expand on questions or topics from each episode. In this podcast, I will address the 3 topics from Chapter 1, the first being the inspiration behind my drive to learn about plasma, the story and concept behind the Telltale Truth, and to expand on the elements of plasma to better transition into Chapter 2, Taking Shape, which will involve the functional and aesthetic considerations for making a vessel in glass. Taming Lightning, Curiosity, Passion, and Purpose. Even though we are trying to condense information so that we can touch on all these different topics and questions about plasma in the Intro to Plasma series, I felt it was important to elaborate on my introduction to plasma, as the following chapters run parallel to my journey and learning process up to today. You'll also find that I tend to view things with a philosophical lens that does not often get expressed in this platform. Also, a fair warning, things tend to get a little bit more personal as we dive into my initial experiences. But anyways, there's something catchy about the name Taming Lightning. After all, it is shorthand for catching lightning in a bottle, meaning a difficult or challenging task, and perhaps to share how it can be done. To do plasma, and this can apply to anything of interest, it is important to consider the following 3 things: curiosity, passion, and purpose. It should be self-evident that the scarcity of that information that you would need to understand and perform the acts of creating a plasma light sculpture are scattered. In this pursuit, it requires curiosity to explore and learn from various people and sources, and passion to continue when you fail and when understanding is beyond your grasp. Purpose, by existential association, is quite loaded. And so, to free yourself from such a burden, I propose that purpose is simply the reason why. Ensure it's often perceived as a lifetime pursuit or purpose of being. Purpose can apply to more than one thing, and you are free to change at any time. I consider change, or rather transformation, as one of humanity's inexhaustible and invaluable tools, for self or other, for better or worse. Hence my adaptation of the title or identity of an alchemist, defined as a person who transforms or creates something through a seemingly magical process, i.e., transmutation. So yeah, I'm passionate about plasma or plasma light. This is a process requiring the technical and artistic expressions of glass with the alchemical and scientific application of electrified gases and specialized equipment that you would also find used in neon. Plasma light art has a magical and dynamic quality to its illumination, in addition to having interactive qualities by proximity and touch. From displays, sculpture, and functional objects, the potential for this as an artistic medium is only truly limited by our resourcefulness. So, where do I begin when talking about my pursuit of plasma? To be honest, I got really lucky that I had the opportunity to explore this when I did. To give additional context to my interest and studies, I was an undergraduate student at Illinois State University, and I was introduced to furnace glass blowing in 2011 by Slate Grove, who was pursuing his MFA in glass under the department head John Miller. In 2013, I was accepted in the Bachelor's of Fine Arts program at ISU, which is a selective program oriented towards advanced professional study in studio arts, consisting of faculty mentors, additional classes, independent study or special projects, and concluded with a solo exhibition. My studies were not entirely focused on glass. I spent some time working in woods, metals, jewelry, expanded media via 3D modeling, animation, 3D printing, laser cutting, and computer-controlled sculptures, almost anything that can supplement my skills with glass. Now, starting in 2014, I took a summer workshop taught by Patrick Collentine at Pilchuck Glass School, which began my introduction to plasma. This very introductory class provided me with the bare-bones basic form and structure, electrode attachment, filling procedure, and a list of resources to buy parts to build a manifold, and most importantly, a mentor and friend where I was encouraged to give this a shot, and a big reason this podcast even began. After that class, I wanted to do plasma, and I was very fortunate to have run into people that could help me make that happen. One of which is Ash Williamson, where you can hear about his story in episode number 2, and very briefly, I had an opportunity to have some pieces filled at a local neon shop called Super Signs, and we'll definitely be talking about that more in later chapters. Under these two conditions, I reasoned it seemed like a possibility. It has a lot to do with the quality of producing light, and something that I was fascinated with in regards to light was both in the refraction and focusing of light using transparent and translucent materials, surfaces, and lenses, the use of LEDs, and the idea of interaction and application of motion to light. Now, shifting towards something a bit more personal, like many who have or will experience when it comes to an academic career or similar signals of adulthood and its pressures, is a sense of looming darkness. For me, college has been something akin to a rite of passage, and among my siblings, a first generation of college graduates. These pressures extract from you waves of doubt and diminishing hope. I didn't feel there would be any opportunity post-graduation. I didn't believe I could be an artist, and there was anxiety over valuable work, self-sufficiency, or being independent. The self-imposed pressures also to make unique work, and the increasing hospitalization and worsening health of my dad, all of which were part of depression that I kept to my shadow and expressed outwardly as ambition and hard work. A shadow, should I step from the light, would become a void and consume me. I needed to make my own light. While pursuing my BFA at Illinois State University, I wanted to make something truly unique to the program, and that became plasma, despite all the challenges, failures, and many suggestions from program mentors and classmates to discard such a challenging medium. Perseverance, dedication, or obsession. It was perhaps simply the undying thought that if I was going to be the only time I could do this, and the future was going to be as dark as I perceived, then I wanted to give everything I have to make this happen no matter what. To the completion of my degree, I had exhibited some of the first of its kind in both undergraduate and graduate solo exhibitions at ISU. Personally, the works were highly unrefined and lacked appropriate study. After all, I did end up pulling this off in the last year of my program. Even still, the overall reception of this exhibition was positive, and its overall quality being greater than the few sculptures that made up the exhibition, which was titled Catabasis in Mortal Imperfection. Corny title, I know, but let me paint you a picture of the exhibition. The space had glossy black walls and a floor of reflective black tile, with the only illumination being the black light bulbs and triangle formation of the plasma sculptures. As you enter the space, you enter void. Voices and scuffling are heard, but your attention is on the illuminated sculptures seeming to float in space. Depending on where you enter, you will either face a floating set of lungs made of masks or faces, with plasma-illuminated bronchioles, with light refracted through a spine with a series of 3 protruding tongues, or a head floating above a limbless torso comprised of a plasma-illuminated spinal cord surrounded by illuminated wire contouring the body. Once you pass this threshold, a triangle is formed by a third sculpture, a bodiless figure comprised of a mask draped in a translucent shroud that refracts the visible pulse of a heart illuminated by plasma light. And to my inexperience, the best single sculpture from that exhibition in both execution and in documentation was the Telltale Truth, the set of lungs. A brief intermission of honesty. The way I handled my anxiety and depression was not in any way healthy, and the shadow did become a void, because I avoided the issue and covered it up. I took a long time before I started pursuing counseling, and by that time it had interfered with my personal relationships, my academic attendance, and overall health. So if you or anyone you know are experiencing mental health problems, please do your best to seek medical help and support for recovery. The Telltale Truth. I wanted to expand on the Telltale Truth for 2 reasons. 1, to answer the aesthetic inspiration or concept behind the piece, and 2, to talk about my plans for reimagining it for an upcoming exhibition. To be honest, the aesthetic inspirations and concepts was intentionally avoided in the podcast for Chapter 1. This sculpture is still quite emotionally charged for me, and I've thought about it slightly differently since revisiting it. And I think when we are getting into Chapter 2 taking shape, we'll dive into those balances for aesthetics and function. Anyways, in a recent post regarding the Telltale Truth, I mentioned that I was going to reimagine or remake the piece, essentially updating it to use in the upcoming exhibition. In the comments, I was asked by Katie Cottingham about the story behind the sculpture and to share my thoughts. So Katie, thank you for asking. So my BFA exhibition was born from the idea known as catabasis, essentially the hero's journey to the underworld, in which they face many challenges in order to return to the world with some kind of knowledge or boon. I used it as a way to channel my depression and had created narratives and characters based on mythical storytelling and somatic symbolism, that is, the use of the body as a reference to explore concepts and ideas. The Telltale Truth was conceived by the idea of death and family, where I learned after the passing of my grandmother on my dad's side, Grandma Josephine, that she had been known as our family orator, having been able to tell a story of each person in our family tree. Now, while I wasn't very close to Grandma Jo, I felt that I should have been, even though most of our visits, as long as I could remember, were always her being very tired, staying awake just long enough to say hello, before nodding off to sleep. You could say, I guess this whole idea was a precursor to what I do now with the podcast, the whole story sharing part. But it motivated me to look at my ancestry a bit, drawing on African roots from Cameroon, but essentially I was inspired by African masks, their meaning, power, and symbol, especially in conjunction with the things like depression and storytelling. Putting together the idea was simple, though the execution brought challenges in multi-process assembly to recreate the respiratory system. The masks as lungs represent the joining of 2 families. You have roots as the bronchi or bronchial tree, which connect you to your origin. The spine as trachea represents a trunk, a funnel for your experiences, and the tongues are the fruits of those experiences that interact with the world. This is where my concept of the 3 tongues develops, which is what you say to yourself, what you say to others, and what others say about you. You see, you may think you have control over the first 2 tongues, and that is mostly true, the things you say to yourself and others, but both affect how others see you, especially when word is equal to your action or behavior. So I hope this kind of explains things a bit on how I think about this piece and its origins as an homage to my grandma, Josephine. In the update for this piece, I would definitely be challenged, since my abilities in sculpting in general is one of my least refined skills in glass. Still, the majority of my upgrade is in the illumination of the plasma through the entire piece, that is the tracheal spine and the tongues, and refining the placement of the electrode in a more aesthetically pleasing location. I will perhaps play with the use of phosphors to help provide contrast between the tongues and the trachea, which will add a bit more planning when it comes to its assembly. And we'll talk about most of these subjects in Chapter 2, with phosphors being revisited in Chapter 3 as we refine these ideas. Elements of plasma. And the final topic of the podcast is a reintroduction to the elements of plasma. As mentioned in Chapter 1, elements of plasma is something I came up with as a way to organize the varying knowledge, process, skills, and techniques that goes into the completion of a plasma lamp or sculpture. These elements are vessel crafting, alchemy, and technology. Now, it may be a bit confusing since we use the same term, elements of plasma, to talk about the parts that make up a plasma vessel. I would like to help clarify that mislabeling by substituting anatomy of plasma sculpture for the topics or the items such as the glass envelope or vessel, gas mixture, electrode, and transformer, and I will provide images labeling these parts in the show notes. Now back to the elements of plasma, where I define what each of these categories are. The first category is vessel crafting, the means of facilities, education, materials, and techniques related to glass making, and also contains the subjects or topics of vessel shape, structure, size, choice of electrode, along with its placement, and leak checking. The second category is alchemy, the means to which pieces can be processed and filled for plasma, containing topics such as cleaning, adding phosphors, filling technique, and gas mixtures and recipes. And the third category is technology, the facilities and means to learn, educate, and practice processing and filling, and finishing the plasma sculpture, containing the topics of vacuum manifold, gas transfer systems, gauges, equipment maintenance and use, transformers, which also includes the considerations for resolving your sculptures aesthetically and safely. So I'm going to stop here, since we are kind of leading up to Chapter 2, taking shape, which will be going into the guidelines for vessel crafting, where we'll review the elements of plasma, elaborate on why vessel crafting comes first, and contextualize the aesthetics and functional considerations in the anatomy of a plasma sculpture. I'd like to take a moment to honor the memory of Gavin Tiernan, who passed away early this year. He will be missed by his family, friends, the Plasma Art Alliance, neon art, and glass community. And while I had not known Gavin long, it was because of the available media platforms that I had the pleasure of knowing, to be inspired, and to learn from him. And while we were unable to interview prior to his passing, I appreciate the one recorded conversation we had during a troubleshoot on livestream. This conversation added another option and solution to how to look at creating and wiring a plasma sculpture, and has been very helpful in that stage. So before we close out, I'd like to share with you an amended version of a statement by Gavin that I think will help many of us new and continuing in plasma to be reminded of the scope and diverse knowledge, the unpredictable natures, and certainly the mindset needed to pursue this dynamic and complex medium. I'm afraid there is no A plus B equals C approach to plasma, as so many tiny differences will yield different effects. You'll probably find that each of us have experimented and come up with varying techniques and subsequent results. But one person's finding will differ to another. Such is the nature of plasma. For instance, the choice of vessel shape, filling technique, filling recipe, filling pressure, electrode or no electrode, use of halogens, choice of a driver, etc. all determine the final outcome, and often the results are much of a surprise to the vessel maker as they are to the observer. The collective group here is akin to a web. All of us are a part of the same basic goal, but each of us has discovered a different thread. All I can say is that the willingness to throw rare gases back into the atmosphere will yield results. The amended elements were inspired by William Warmus's writings Reticulate Aesthetics, From Tree to Web, in which I wanted to expand on the mindset that comes with the model of a tree to that of a web or nebulous structure, spreading out and connecting in different ways in different structures under the same purpose. While our approaches may differ, what may not work for me may be in favor of someone else's circumstances, and thus this has inspired a lot in how I approach learning in Plasma today. Thank you for listening to the Taming Lightning podcast. Music credit to the following artist. The introduction is Boost by Joakim Karud, and credits are The Process by Lakey Inspired. I'd like to thank Geeks for inviting me to collaborate for this series. Writing chapter notes was challenging yet fun, though academically I never found myself enjoying writing. Yet, I hope to have more feedback I can respond to for the upcoming chapters. Let me know if my experience helped provide some footing, since there's yet to exist a comprehensive resource for guidance. While frustrating, through simple curiosity and a spark of passion, finding various sources to tackle these subjects can be quite fun. And I'm willing to admit that in regards to my announcement in the last podcast, I failed to meet my declared release date by exactly 1 week, but in the very least I'm honing in. Writing just took much more time than ever anticipated. Lastly, I'd like to thank the Pittsburgh Glass Center for supporting me as a place of research and inspiration, as well as encouraging me to pursue this project, and the Plasma Art Alliance, where I have an access to a well of knowledge and connects me to some amazing and supportive people. Links for supporting the Intro to Plasma series will be provided in the show notes. Feel free to share, comment, and subscribe. And as always, be safe, be healthy, and be strong. And I'll see you next time.